If you were a kid, or possibly even a parent, sometime in the 90s, there was one brand of toy that was completely unavoidable because it completely changed the game of backyard water blaster warfare, and that is Super Soaker. Since the very first days of the Super Soaker 50 and the subsequent gigantic numbers that they ended up with, the brand itself has been bought and sold a few times, eventually landing in Hasbro's hands, and now they control the fate of Super Soaker. And since those days, a lot has changed, namely due to the very untoy-like and unfun thing like lawsuits. But in recent years, it seems like things have turned around, there has been agreements reached, and now Super Soaker is trying new things. Because in case you haven't been paying attention, there have been a lot of changes to the water blaster aisle. And a lot of that has to do with just like the easy, I call them big gulp water blasters that allow you just to refill it within a second and get back into your backyard battle. But Super Soaker's doing something a little different this year, and they sent out a sample of the Drench XL that not only allows you to fill the blaster incredibly quickly, but it allows you to fill it directly from the hose. So here we have the blaster. This is the Drench XL in my hand, and on first glance, this is a really cool looking blaster. So I love the colors because this is water-based. We have a lot of blues, we have some aquas, we have some royal blues. But then we also have, of course, the safety orange and this really lime 90s green that just looks good. It's very vibrant, it's very colorful. It harkens back to some of the original Super Soakers, which to me is a good thing because those were some of the prime years for Super Soaker. But this all hinges on a gimmick. A very interesting gimmick, one that kind of subverts the water blaster genre just a tiny little bit because there is no area, at least to my knowledge, that I could open up and dump water into this tank. It's not possible because you need this. This is the base station that hooks into your hose. It just feeds in right there. And when you plug it in, the water blaster fills itself up using the water pressure as well as the water from your hose. Now what that looks like is that when you touch this down into the base station, the plunger up here starts to float up, filling with water, and then when you press the trigger, you are able to do one big giant mega blast of water or 3 bursts that allow you just to have a little more longevity into a water battle. If you've watched any of my videos, you know that when I come across a gimmick, I really like to look at it in depth and see if it's not only useful, but fun. Does it add to the fun? And I think when it comes to the Super Soaker Drench XL, it's a little bit of a mixed bag. First, we covered how well I like the design of this. Very 90s coded, very 90s adjacent. And we also have a bit of a gimmick with this refilling station that plugs into your hose, which I think is a really good idea because if you remember back in the 90s or maybe even early 2000s, some of the Super Soakers in like the thousands numbers, right? Like the CPS 3000, I think there was like a 2500, 5000. I mean, the numbers go crazy when it comes to that. You had to wear these big giant water tank backpacks that were not only uncomfortable, they were also extremely heavy when it was filled with water. So we are getting rid of that and just allowing direct feed into the hose that makes this a little more portable than just being able to spray your hose at a friend in the backyard. I have to get this outside, give it a test, because this really lives or dies by that gimmick because there is no other way that I'm able to feed water into this thing. It all hinges on the base station. So let's go do that. So my first impression of this is really cool. Like, it's a fun gimmick. You hook this into the hose. I was expecting it to kind of spray everywhere and just be a little messy. That's not the case here. I'm guessing as long as the gaskets and the seals in this base station are good and they are not cracked, worn out, you will see that level of this kind of working out. And then the connection point of when you put the blaster nozzle into the base station and when it fills up, it's a very smooth mechanism. You can see the plunger rise in the back of the transparent tube, and it all just works really great. Other piece that I was worried about is that when you remove it, that there would be just like some water that spurts or something like that, getting you soaked before you even get into your blaster battle. That's not the case here. This really does a good job. I was expecting this to be like a cheaper part, I guess, and it doesn't seem like that's the case. And because you're using the water pressure as well as the water, you're not pumping up the blaster, you're not doing anything extra. Once it's filled up, all you need to do is just hit the trigger. The option that you have is to adjust the nozzle, and that gives you either a 3-round burst or a full giant fire hose of water that allows you to unleash all the contents in the tank. That provides you with ample water pressure so that you're able to launch this thing very far. I was impressed by, again, how easy this was to work. And then, as I was refilling it extremely easily, I was having a really good time. And that's when I kind of realized a couple things. One, I wasn't moving very far from the base station. And the other thing is that I was refilling this often. It doesn't hold a ton of water. You're not able to control the stream of water all that well because, true to its name, it's a power drench. You're just going to get soaked when you use this thing. You are not going to be able to have any sort of lengthy or long water battle. So that's where you're going to find the limitation. You're going to need to be by the base station for this to work for any length of time and for it to be a repeatable process. Because if you're in the middle of a yard and then you have your base station way on the other side of the yard, that's a lot of distance to traverse quite often. Because even with the 3-round burst option, you still get out of water very quickly. And again, I think that's by design. This is the Power Drench XL, so it's going to just unload a lot of water at any given time. I think just knowing the name of it helps understand what it's all about, which is great. I mean, it's great to have the name on the packaging match what the blaster does. The base station, though, becomes a little more problematic if you are trying to have a blaster battle somewhere where you don't have access to a hose. Now, that could be a pool. That could be somebody's backyard where the hose is in the front yard and everybody's in the backyard. There are a number of ways that this could go sideways, especially if you lose this device, you've essentially rendered the Power Drench XL inoperable. And the reason for that is because there are no ports to fill this up. It needs the hose pressure and the water from the hose to operate everything in this blaster. And in light of that, it would have been amazing to see this be able to attach to the blaster somehow, some way, just a little bit, because in some capacity, because essentially if you lose this, these become separated, you're not going to be able to get this blaster to work as intended. You might be able to figure something out with the front nozzle and some plumbing, but honestly, this is the piece that comes in the box. It's the thing that's going to work the best with it. And the thing is, it even comes with a tack rail on top, so if this had some sort of clip, even on the side like this, it would have been a long way in solving one of the problems that I foresee, is that in climates where it gets cold in the winter, where it freezes over, you have to put your super soakers away. You're not going to be shooting ice cubes at people in the wintertime. And during that process, as fall cleanup kind of goes underway, what's going to happen to this? What's going to happen to this? And even in the best case scenarios where these get close, something could crack, something could break. And if this piece is the unfortunate victim of that, this is just a cool looking water blaster that no longer works. But operating it as intended, being close to the base station, this is a ton of fun. It is a fun gimmick, and like we talked about at the beginning, this is a good functional gimmick that allows you to dip this into a water source and refill this extraordinarily quickly, and then just have a big giant blast of water ready to go. So in that case, in that scenario, the Power Drench XL is a phenomenal blaster. I love the design, I love the gimmick when you're situated for it. But the second we lose this, the second we are disconnected from the system, you're gonna have to find another water blaster for a battle, because this is just not gonna cut it. Could it have used more capacity? People could probably argue that, but I am somebody who is more in favor of having slimmer, less water weight blasters because they're just uncomfortable to hold for any length of time. But ultimately, this is a fun one. It's a fun one, but you need to really be thinking about if you're going to be able to use the base station or if you're going to be able to keep it together, because that's where it all kind of falls apart, unfortunately. When I started filming this video, what I had zero idea about was some older super soakers from around the turn of the century. So from 1999 to about 2000, early 2000s, there was a line of super soakers called superchargers. And from what I can tell, it was very, very similar to the Power Drench XL. I was absolutely shocked, absolutely floored to see the technology that they used back then basically be the same thing now. And it wasn't just a one-off blaster, there was quite a few blasters. There was a big giant backpack that allowed a lot more water to be stored in a smaller form factor. So where we have the Power Drench XL trying to do all of that in one, this was a more, essentially a larger version, or like a more capacity version of the Power Drench XL. The other thing that was pretty cool, there was a triple charger, and again, It was the same similar mechanism where you dunk it into a base station and it would fill it up and pressurize. However, the difference with this is you got 3 bottles of it, and if you wanted to, you could fill up the tanks yourself and then pressurize the Super Soaker with the handle that we all kind of knew and loved back then. So this gimmick that I think really works well for the Power Drench XL is something of an older technology, apparently. And not only that, but it's also solved some of the problems of having to run back to the base station and allow you to fill it up with the normal mechanism. And the blaster also supplied an alternate method to pressurize the water. Now, why didn't they do that here? Because I'm guessing to over-engineer a blaster like that, it involves a lot more complexity, it involves a lot more cost. And that is something that the toy industry is facing as a huge pressure to keep costs as low as possible, because prices just keep rising and rising due to, well, all kinds of pressures at this point. Anyway, as soon as I discovered this, I had to film more to the video because that was just absolutely fascinating. But it also makes sense to a degree, because we see different gimmicks or different play patterns, toy features be repurposed after a long while of being dormant, just to see if that specific feature will pop again, create some new interest, or create some new sales. Super Soaker superchargers were a thing before the Power Drench XL. Something I learned, and I had to film it as soon as possible, so you also knew as well. Clever mechanisms aside, let me know in the comment section what you think of the Power Drench XL. If you think that it's fun that Super Soaker's trying new things, giving some new gimmicks, some exposure with blasters is always a fun thing. Maybe this refill mechanism or something will ultimately get refined over time. As I said, let me know in the comment sections what you think. And if you like our discussion on a Super Soaker, well, I talk about Nerf, I talk about action figures, pop culture collectibles, anything action related. And now that it's summer, hopefully more water blasters, because just fun. It's a fun summertime activity. And the way to stay tuned for more videos in the future is to hit that subscribe button to stay tuned to the Ri-Fi channel, because if you like this video, I can guarantee you'll like other videos that I have coming out. That's all I know about the Super Soaker Power Drench XL. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.